For most of the 20th century, the waterfall you are about to see did not exist. It was drowned, buried under the slack water of a concrete dam, and for 87 years almost nobody knew it was there. Then in 1995 the dam came out, the river dropped, and a 5-foot curtain of whitewater emerged from the deep like a memory returning. This is Big Spring Falls on the Kettle River, at the edge of Sandstone, Minnesota. We are walking down to meet a waterfall that came back from the dead. Let us get our bearings first. We are in Pine County, in east-central Minnesota, about 90 miles northeast of the Twin Cities on the road to Duluth. The town of Sandstone sits on the west bank of the Kettle River, and just south of town, the river slides over the ledges of Big Spring Falls. The falls lie inside the boundary of Banning State Park, whose rapids and quarry ruins stretch upstream from here. Everything in this story, the town, the park, the stone, and the falls, is written in the rock beneath our feet. The walk-in is short and easy, dropping through open woods toward the sound of moving water. It is the 3rd of October, and the forest is turning, gold and rust leaves drifting down onto the path. This whole hike is under 2 miles, a quiet out and back that trades distance for one remarkable destination. Late afternoon light is slanting through the trees, and somewhere ahead the river is already talking. Listen for it as we go. The river we are heading for is no ordinary stream. The Kettle rises in the forest to the north and runs roughly 80 miles before it empties into the St. Croix. In 1975, the state of Minnesota made the Kettle its very first designated wild and scenic river, the founding member of a small and select list. Upstream of the old dam site, the river is classed as scenic. Downstream from here to the St. Croix, it carries the Wilder designation, one of only 2 stretches in Minnesota to hold it. There it is, the Kettle, sliding along below the trail in sheets of dark copper-colored water. The color is natural, stained like tea by the bogs and forests the river drains on its way here. In autumn the flow is usually low and gentle, and the exposed rock along the banks shows you the river's skeleton. In spring, this same channel can become one of the most powerful pieces of whitewater in the Midwest. Today it is calm enough to walk beside, and generous enough to show us its bones. The river's name is older than any town on its banks. The Dakota called it Segawatba, and the Ojibwe called it Akiko-Ziabai, and both names translate to Kettle River. They refer to the kettles, the smooth, rounded holes bored straight down into the sandstone riverbed. Each one begins as a whirlpool strong enough to spin pebbles and cobbles in place, and over centuries the swirling stones grind a cylindrical well into solid rock. The river, in other words, is named for what it does to stone, and it has been doing it for a very long time. The trail bends south now, following the water, and the sound ahead is getting bigger. You can feel the gradient change underfoot, the river beginning to hurry. Ledges of pale salmon-colored rock start breaking through the soil, the first hints of the bedrock this whole town is named for. Around one more bend, the river will step off that rock all at once. Stay with the sound. Before we reach the falls, the name deserves a word. Big Spring Falls is not named for the season, but for an actual spring, a large one that issues from the far side of the river near the drop. The falls themselves stand about 5 feet tall, a broad shelf of whitewater rather than a plunging cataract. What they lack in height they make up in width and voice, a full river folding over ancient stone. And unlike most waterfalls, this one has a birthday within living memory. And here it is, Big Spring Falls, the whole Kettle River pouring over a rose-colored ledge in a long, broken line of white. Spray drifts off the drop and the roar fills the little valley. It is hard to stand here and believe that for most of a century this exact place was silent, flattened under the still water behind a dam. Every wave you are watching is, in a sense, brand new. This is what a river sounds like when it gets its voice back. Here is what happened. In 1908, a hydroelectric dam was built on the Kettle just downstream of this spot, and its pool swallowed the falls. For generations, the river here was a reservoir, and Big Spring Falls existed only in old memories and older photographs. By the late 20th century, the dam had outlived its usefulness and stood idle. A working river had been turned off like a tap, and almost nobody alive had ever seen what it was hiding. Walk the ledges beside the drop, and you can read the whole story in the rock. The sandstone is layered and cross-bedded, laid down grain by grain in Precambrian time, among the older sedimentary rocks you can touch in this state. The water has scoured it clean, carving runnels and half-formed kettles right at the lip. Be careful here, the rock is smooth and the current is serious. But there are few places in Minnesota where you can stand this close to this much moving water. In 1995, the community of Sandstone, the Department of Natural Resources, and the Pollution Control Agency worked together to take the dam out. The goal was simple and radical: return the Kettle to its natural state. When the structure came down, the pool drained away, and Big Spring Falls and the Sandstone Rapids rose out of the reservoir intact, as if the river had simply been waiting. Dam removals are common talk today, but this was early, pioneering work. Minnesota chose a waterfall over a wall, and this is the result. Take a moment here because this is the heart of the hike. October is a fine time to visit. The flow is friendly, the banks are walkable, and the colors burn along both shores. The tannin dark water turns gold where it thins over the ledge, then shatters into white. Photographers come here at dusk for exactly this light. There is no railing and no crowd, just the river doing what it was built to do. One of the quiet reasons the dam came out swims beneath the surface. Lake Sturgeon, huge, armored, slow-growing fish that can outlive a human being, once ran up the Kettle freely, and the dam had blocked their passage for decades. Removing it reopened the river road, letting sturgeon move upstream again to the rocky stretches where they spawn. A dam removal is not just scenery, it is plumbing for an entire ecosystem. The falls got the headlines, but the fish got a future. Look downstream from the falls and you are looking at the reach where the dam itself once stood, now just fast water and clean rock. Below here, the Kettle runs free to the St. Croix, which itself flows to the Mississippi. It is strange and satisfying to think that nothing man-made now interrupts that entire journey. The river we are watching leaves this ledge and does not stop. That has only been true for about 30 years. Now for the other half of this story, the stone. Around 1885, a man named William H. Grant opened the first quarry on the Kettle River near what became Sandstone. That summer, teams of oxen were already hauling wagon loads of cut stone a mile up from the river to the old military road. The rock was worth the effort, a salmon and buff-colored sandstone that cut cleanly and lasted nearly forever. Within a few years, the quarry passed through a series of companies, and a town began to gather around the work. As you walk these banks, notice how the rock stands in squared shelves and blocky faces. Some of that is the river's work, and some of it is human, the ghost geometry of old quarrying all along this valley. The town above us is literally named for what lies under it. For half a century, cutting this stone was the engine of life here. The trail we are on threads right through the middle of that history. Kettle River sandstone turned out to be remarkable material. Its grains are locked together by a high share of silica cement, making it nearly impervious to damp and frost, and tests in the 1890s found its resistance to crushing close to that of granite. Courthouses, schools, banks, and city halls across Minnesota, South Dakota, Kansas, and Nebraska were built from it. It paved streets in St. Paul, went into structures at Fort Snelling, and raised the Board of Trade building in Superior, Wisconsin. A little river town in the Pines helped build half the Midwest. It is peaceful walking here now. Hard to imagine this valley ringing with drills and derricks. Harder still to imagine what happened to it in a single afternoon in 1894. The forests that surrounded these towns back then were not like these woods. They were stump lands, dried slash left behind by industrial logging. That summer had been brutally dry. All it needed was a spark, and on the 1st of September it got one. On September 1, 1894, a firestorm now known as the Great Hinckley Fire swept across Pine County. In about 4 hours, it burned roughly 400 square miles, destroying Hinckley, Sandstone, Mission Creek, and other settlements outright. More than 400 people died, making it one of the deadliest disasters in Minnesota history. The fire moved faster than a train, and in some places the trains themselves barely escaped. Sandstone, the town above this trail, stood directly in its path. This water below us is part of why anyone in Sandstone survived that day. As the fire closed in, people ran down these bluffs and waded into the cold kettle, crouching in the river while the world above them burned. Even so, some 80 residents of Sandstone died in the flames. The railroad bridge over the gorge, 150 feet above the water, caught fire and collapsed minutes after the last train crossed it. The same river that gives this place its beauty once gave it survival. The morning after Sandstone was gone, its buildings ash, its quarry idle, its people scattered or grieving. Yet the town refused to stay dead. Survivors came back almost immediately and began again on the same ground, because the two things that mattered most, the river and the stone, had survived the fire untouched. Rebuilding a burned town takes lumber, money, and stubbornness. Sandstone had the stubbornness, and help was about to arrive with the money. The trail climbs a little here, and the view opens along the river corridor. Everything you can see was rebuilt after 1894, the town, the rail line, the working quarry. That rebirth was not left to chance. It was bankrolled by one of the most powerful men in America, a man whose railroad ran right through this valley. His name is stamped all over the history of the Northwest. James J. Hill, the railroad magnate they called the Empire Builder, and his son-in-law Samuel Hill arrived with the financial backing Sandstone needed to rise again. A crucial part of their plan was buying land to enlarge the Sandstone quarry just east of town. The railroad needed stone, the stone needed the railroad, and the town needed both. Under that arrangement, the quarry became the most extensive sandstone operation in Minnesota. The gamble worked, and Sandstone grew back stronger than before the fire. Keep an eye on the rock faces as we walk. Some still carry the straight drill scars of the quarry years. The operation ran for roughly 50 years in all, until concrete and changing tastes finally ended the trade in cut stone. When the quarrymen left, the forest moved back in, and the river kept grinding away at what remained. What was once an industrial pit is now parkland, climbing crag and trail. Few places wear their history this openly. The stone itself deserves its close-up. This is rock of the Hinckley Formation, a Precambrian sandstone laid down as clean quartz sand in shallow water, unimaginably long before the first trees. Uniform grains, welded by silica, gave it a strength close to granite with the workability of sandstone, which is why builders loved it. The same hardness is why the falls exist at all. The ledge resists the river instead of washing away. The quality that built courthouses is the quality that holds up the waterfall. Upstream of Sandstone, this same river corridor becomes one of Minnesota's great small parks. If you continue north along the Kettle, you enter a gorge of rapids, pine and quarry ruins that paddlers speak of with real respect. Our hike today stays near the falls, but the two landscapes are one story, the same rock, the same river, the same history of stone and fire. It would be wrong to leave without introducing it. Banning State Park was established by the Minnesota legislature in 1963 and has grown to more than 6,000 acres along a 10-mile stretch of the Kettle. Inside it, hikers on the Quarry Loop Trail walk past the ruins of the old Banning Sandstone Quarry, stone walls standing silent in the forest. The park holds Wolf Creek Falls, the Log Creek Arches, and a cave known as Robinson's Ice Cave. Big Spring Falls sits within the park's boundary at its southern end. It is the whole story of this valley, preserved in one park. And then there is the Whitewater. Through the Banning Gorge, the Kettle drops through a famous string of rapids with names paddlers know by heart: Blueberry Slide, Mother's Delight, Dragon's Tooth, and Hell's Gate. In high spring water, this is counted among the best whitewater runs in the Midwest, and among the most dangerous, with undercut banks and those same swirling kettles waiting below. Kayakers travel from across the region to run it. The quiet river beside us has a much wilder personality a few miles upstream. The light is going long and gold now as we turn back along the water. An October evening on the Kettle is a quiet argument for the whole idea of restoration. No dam, no reservoir, just a river running the way it did before any of us arrived. Somewhere below, sturgeon are working upstream through water their ancestors lost for a century. The falls keep up their steady thunder behind us. Some places you visit, this one you seem to say goodbye to. Before you leave Sandstone, the old quarry itself is worth a stop. It survives as Robinson Park, a city park set inside the historic quarry walls on the west bank of the Kettle. Climbers rope up on the same cut sandstone faces the quarrymen left behind, and in winter the walls sheet over with ice and the ice climbers arrive. It is a rare thing, an industrial ruin turned playground, history you can put your hands on. The town that stone built now plays on the stone. So that is Big Spring Falls, a 5-foot waterfall with a century-sized story, a river named by the Dakota and the Ojibwe for the kettles it grinds into rock, a stone that built courthouses across the Midwest, a fire that nearly erased the town, and a dam whose removal gave Minnesota back a waterfall no one alive had seen. If you want a short walk that holds fire, stone, and second chances, this is it. Thank you for watching. Follow for more of the trails of the world.